Hi there. It's really nice to see everybody, even if it's virtually. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you about my story. So, the year I turned 14 was my crossing over year. It was the year Randy Beers, my childhood friend, died of leukemia, and I saw death close up for the first time. And it was the year of a couple of other crossing overs, one moral and one geographic. And I'm going to tell you about them now in what I like to call my running away story. So I lived on this perfect block in this perfect neighborhood. There were even sidewalks and clean streets and beautiful trees, and the kids played kickball in the street. We played Batman and Robin, and everything was perfect except for my house. My house was the one with the overgrown lawn and the broken swing set and the peeling paint and the barking dog and the police that would come almost every weekend because my mother and stepfather would be fighting. I lived in this house with my mother, who was a wild drunk and a compulsive liar, and my stepdad, who was a violent sociopath. So things on that perfect block were not so perfect for me, but at least I had the block. The first time I ran away, I was 5 years old, and I made it all the way to the mailbox on the corner. I'm not sure what happened that day to make me want to run, or why I thought the corner mailbox would be a good place to hide. Eventually, I got bored and came home, and I didn't run away for a long time after that. And I want to fast forward to when I was 13, because that was the point at which my mom had to sell our house in that perfect neighborhood that was my sanctuary to pay off my stepdad's debts. And we ended up in this tiny apartment at the edge of town. It was me, my mom, my 17-year-old sister, and my stepdad. Now, my sister at 17 made a decision right away, and that was to move in with my dad. And even though she left the school boundaries, she got to go to stay at our school because it was her senior year, and they gave that grace. I, on the other hand, decided to stay with my mom, and I did that for a few different reasons. The first one was I felt like somebody needed to take care of her, and that was my job, and that was messed up thinking, but that's what I was thinking at the time. Secondly, and probably the most difficult part, was that no one asked me. No one suggested it. No one said, why don't you go too? And I was afraid if I asked and someone said no, that would be a rejection I couldn't stand. So I stayed. And then the last reason was the really practical one. If I moved in with my dad, I would be outside the school boundaries. And I needed to stay at my school. I needed to stay with my friends. They were my safety. So I stuck it out. And actually, only a few months later, my mom got up the courage and she left my stepdad, which took a lot. And we moved into a tinier apartment, just her and me, closer into town. And I got up the courage at that point to say, if I ever see you with him again, my stepdad, I'm out of here. And I had that courage to draw that bright line, which saved me, I think, because it was only a few months into living in that tiny apartment, and my mom was heading out to the bars at 10 o'clock with her new boyfriend, John. That's how she rolled. She ended up with 5 husbands. Anyway, she and John headed out the door about 10 o'clock, and at 2 in the morning, when she came back, I heard her voice, but it wasn't John she was talking to. It was Jerry, my stepdad. And at that point, I made a plan. I got up quietly and I packed my big trunk that had been sitting around for camp, and I put all my clothes in it, and I waited till morning. In the morning, I tiptoed to my mom's room and I opened the door just to make sure. And yep, sure enough, sprawled right next to her on the bed was Jerry. His creepy toupee was on the nightstand next to him. For those of you who don't know, that's a little hair piece that men who don't want to look bald put on their heads. And it was sitting right there. And underneath the bed were his ugly white tasseled shoes. And on the dresser was that outdated leisure suit. And I closed the door and backed away, and I headed off to school. Now, the junior high and high school were right next to one another. And so as a junior high student, I crossed over to the high school side to look for my sister. And I found her friends. And I said, tell Tracy to wait for me after school. I am going home with her. And their eyes got pretty big because they knew that Tracy and I didn't get along and she wasn't going to be happy about. Thankfully, my sister didn't keep her feelings from taking me home. She got the trunk, we got the trunk, and we headed off to my dad's. And as we're driving to my dad's, I realized, oh shoot, I have got a problem to solve, and I've got to solve it right now because I want to be at my dad's. but I also need to stay at my school. And by the time we got to my dad's, I had a plan. We called a friend who was willing to offer up her address. We got a utility bill. We whited out our address. We typed in, there were typewriters then, we typed in the new address of our friend, and then we copied it several times so we couldn't see that we had been playing with it. And we submitted that as a change of address, and the school for 4 years never realized I was outside their boundaries, thank goodness. And while I was in high school, enjoying my friends and enjoying the safety of my dad's home, there was occasionally a time when I said, I kicked myself. Why didn't I do this sooner? It was so easy. I just had to get up and go. But I also forgave myself because I realized that it isn't always, easy to recognize that sometimes there is such a thing as a good lie. Thank you.